Hi 705 class, this is Greg Arabia. Some of you have asked me about my biodiesel car and my biodiesel processing machine. Volkswagen has, I'd say, the best biodiesel car. Pretty much anything before 2006. The 1.9 engine is the car to have for running straight vegetable oil or biodiesel. I also have a 6.5 Chevy diesel truck. Not the best for biodiesel. They say the Ford 7.3 is the ultimate biodiesel truck. The Volkswagen is the ultimate car. I'll take you inside to show you the biodiesel process. Okay, so the first thing you need to do in order to make biodiesel is you must obtain the oil. So the way I like to obtain oil is in 5-gallon cubes. Those are down here. I collect 5-gallon cubes from the restaurants. Sometimes you have to train the restaurant owners a little bit to try to give you some clean oil, and you don't want any garbage. Here's an example over here of some of the garbage. Now you can see why I like the cubes, because you could ultimately see what good oil looks like and what bad oil looks like. This is my bad oil supply. This will have to go back into a drum, and a recycling company or a garbage company needs to come and pick it up. I have McCutcheons, it's called. They come and pick up a 55-gallon drum. It's not very expensive. You're going to need to find some place to get rid of your waste when doing biodiesel. You can also obtain your oil in a 55-gallon drum. A lot of places have that. It's not as good because they could hide a lot of water in the bottom. The water's going to drain straight to the bottom. If you're pumping one of these drums, you want to take all the oil off the top. So after you obtain your oil, and make sure it's clean by letting it sit in gravity, you will be able to see what good and bad is. In this drum, this is my filtering drum. I added a sight tube so we could see if there's clean oil, bad oil, or water all the way at the bottom. On top of this drum, I have two filters. One's a 400 micron filter, which is right here, and then a 200 micron filter. You need to get your oil to at least 200 microns when you're filtering. They do make a 100 micron filter, but I found that it doesn't flow very well. So after gravity does its job for about a week, in between processes, I normally fill this drum up to let all the oil filter and sit. Then we'll see what's good and bad. I added a drain at the bottom of the drum to drain off any garbage oil. That's what I showed you previously. And at about 25 to 30 gallons in the drum, we want to add a filter. We want to take the cleanest oil, which is going to be on top, and drain it into the processor. So I'm going to start the process right now and open my clean oil valve and open my valve here into the processor. We're going, one way to save energy, instead of turning the pump on, which I would normally do to make this process go a little bit faster, I raise the drum up high so that way gravity could do its job and flow 25 gallons in. So I'm going to let this do its work, and we will come back to this video. After gravity did its work, the oil flowed into my processor from this valve. Now I could shut this valve off, and also this valve's already off. Since the filtering drum's higher than the processor, the oil goes into the processor. After this happens, we can make sure I have all my valves open and closed properly. This valve is for the oil inlet. This valve is to shut off the oil to the processor. This valve is to exit any oil out of the processor after the pump. Right in here I have a heating element. This heating element was welded into place in a square tube, so that way it's easily able to be changed. All it is your normal $10 heating element. Usually I go through about one a year. I put these together with rubber hoses because they're adjustable, and you could also see through them to see how much oil is in this tube line up here and down here. It's a good idea to do this because you may have to change your pump someday. Up here we keep flowing. I also added another shutoff to shut off any oil going into this processor. Back here is where the final oil will flow through some filters. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the processor right here. This is my pump. After I hear it run for a second, I could then turn on my heating element, which is down here. This section will get really hot because there's a heating element in there. Over here from Walmart, I bought a timer with a temperature gauge, and it also alarms me when the temperature gets too hot. We need our oil to get to 130 degrees. After the oil reaches 130 degrees, we can then add in our lye and methanol mixture. There's a step here I'm going to skip, and that's oil titration, because there's a lot of videos already on oil titration. I've been doing this for a long time, and I know that 25 gallons of my oil, since I always get it from the same person, and with 5 gallons of methanol, that's 20%. And my lye is over here. One of these containers is the exact amount for me, so I just use this as a scooper. This is 454 grams. I buy in bulk to try and save money. You could buy whichever kind of drain cleaner, lye, sodium hydroxide. So you do your oil titration test to show you exactly how much lye you want to mix with that 20% of methanol. So you mix 20% of methanol in this tank with your lye. I'm not going to actually mix those two together until this gets up towards 130 degrees, because methanol is really explosive, and we don't want any problems with that. So try to do that as soon. You don't need to let that sit around. And that's all for this section. We'll come back and add the methanol and lye mixture, and then we'll make some biodiesel. Thank you. It'll cook for about an hour or so until it's now reached 146 degrees. We need it to be above 130 degrees. The longer you let it set, the better. You don't want to go above 200 degrees. Venting the top lid is going to allow some of the any water in there or sugar to evaporate. So now that we've reached that temperature, we can now make our methanol and lye mixture. This is our methanol tank for mixing methanol and lye. So we're going to open that up. The way I buy methanol, the way I used to buy methanol, was in 5-gallon pails that come like this. That costs about $7 a gallon. If we buy them in 55-gallon drums, we're just at about $4 a gallon. Using 20% methanol for each gallon of biodiesel, that comes out to a little over $1 a gallon with our factoring in our energy and our water. So I'm going to take my 5 gallons of methanol. It's always good to wear safety glasses and gloves Methanol, it's like putting rubbing alcohol on your hand. It's kind of like a cooling filling. Lye, it really burns. If you've seen Fight Club, it'll burn a hole into your arm. And the way to counteract lye is with vinegar. So if you keep a bottle of vinegar around and you happen to get a little bit of lye on you, put some vinegar on your arm and it'll instantly be cooled. So I'm going to take my methanol and dump it into my methanol mixing processor. On the side of the processor, there's a gauge of how many gallons are inside, but we don't need that since it's already measured out in 5-gallon pails. I may use that in the future if I decide to carry a 55-gallon drum with me all the time instead of transferring it into 5-gallon pails, but for now this works. Still a little bit iffy on the 55-gallon drum leaving that much flammable fluid around. While this is draining, I could go over a couple of things on the processor that I'd like to change, some of the things I have changed. I did buy this processor. It was very basic when I bought it. Some of the things that still need change that I'd like to see is there's a lot of different kinds of metal going on here. They're black iron into galvanized, into brass. The galvanized could probably go. That's not a good thing. If you know about galvanized pipe, it plugs up a lot. But a galvanized fitting, a union like this, is also about $15 to $20, so that's going to just stay for the while. Okay, after all my methanol is into my tank, we can now add the lye. Like I said, the way you know how much lye to add into your biodiesel is by titrating. I don't titrate anymore because I already know how much I'm going to need. Lye is most attracted to water. It's really attracted to methanol too. But if this box of lye gets wet, it'll start to clump up. As you can see, this piece is clumped up. It probably got a little bit wet. So it's best to open your container of lye and make sure you close it right away. Try not to get any on your arms or it will burn. Okay. So that was very successful. You want to put your glasses on for this part. If you've ever used Drano or something like that, you know what the chemical burn could smell like. It's like the exact same smell. I use a mixing stick, a piece of PVC plastic, and I pour my lye in. It's a good idea to not stick your head right over it. It's like having Drano. And we want to mix this for about 5 minutes. I'm going to cut the camera right now, and we'll come back to this after I mix it for 5 minutes. Great. Okay, so now that I've mixed my methanol for about 5 minutes here, I'm going to put the lid back on. Now in my methanol container, I put a blow-off valve in case pressure would build up. That way the air has a place to release. So we're going to open up the valve to allow the methanol to feed into the system. I forgot to explain this later, but here is the pump input, so that way you could pull from this tank and this tank, or my clean oil tank. So it'll pump through and up and through here. And whenever we get to the filtering stage, I'll be able to close this valve and flow it through here, which are my filters, down through there. So this takes a minute because I have this specifically set up. This is a smaller valve from the methanol, and the oil valve is a lot larger. So that way it allows the two to mix inside with the turbine of the pump rather than just always sloshing it together, at least for the initial adding of the methanol. And we also don't want to run straight methanol through this heating element because I feel like that could cause some type of fire. So you want to be extremely cautious with the methanol and the lye, especially if you're working in a school setting. I had the opportunity to help with it at Fox Chapel, and you just have to be very careful with the methanol and the lye. I try not to let the kids handle it as much if they are, to wear lab coats, wear goggles, wear gloves, and have vinegar nearby. We might all be asked to someday create our own machine. So I thought this showing this video would be a good idea to everybody in case someday you had to make your own machine. We have about a half a gallon left to go here. We could watch it on the methanol tank so we know that it's all going into our processor. After this methanol is out of this tank and everything is into this tank, I'm going to shut this valve off and allow the biodiesel, methanol, and lye mixture to mix. What it's really doing is the lye and methanol made a reaction, and that reaction is reacting with the oil, and it's pulling the glycerine out of the oil and dropping it straight to the bottom. So after this step, we're going to let it mix for 2 hours, let it sit overnight, and then come back to it in the morning, and hopefully we have biodiesel. There should be that 20% waste of methanol at the bottom, so we're looking at 4 to 5 gallons of methanol. My tank is now empty, so I'm going to shut that valve off, open this valve, my heater is off, the pump is on, this valve's open, this bottom valve's open. A lot of you have talked about methanol recovery in the discussion boards. I did add a methanol recovery tube. It is right here. What it is the methanol will evaporate. It evaporates very fast. So anything, when you heat it up, it's going to evaporate and go through that tube and into here. My system doesn't do methanol recovery as well because I need a tight lid for the top. When I bought the machine, it didn't come with a tight lid, so a lot of my methanol escapes through the gaps. And that's all I have for you right now, and we'll come back to it tomorrow morning. I'm just going to let this mix for 2 hours and shut it off. Okay, so I let the biodiesel, the oil, methanol, and lye mixture sit overnight after it mixed for 2 hours. And now we have biodiesel. I'll turn on my light and we'll try and zoom the camera in so that you can try and see this line over here. Bring the camera in. And you can see a definite line right here. The bottom half is glycerine and the top half is biodiesel. We need to drain the glycerine off. That's what I'll be doing for my final project, is making soap out of the glycerine. I've never done this before, so I'll be making different types of soap. Liquid hand soap, regular hard soap, and also there's a floor cleaner. You could see that the glycerine, it's a real thick material. That's the reason why I prefer biodiesel over regular just straight vegetable oil, because this is really thick and your injection pump's pumping all that. It's going through your injectors, and it's just better to have a thinner material like diesel, because that's how the car was made to run. So I'm just going to let this drain off until I get to the bottom. We'll start seeing a light gold color instead of this dark brown color. And then after this all drains off, we'll come back to this video and we'll run it through the filters and into the final pump, and then we're going to fill up my car. Okay, so we just finished draining off all of our glycerine. Now we have exactly 25 gallons of biodiesel. After you drain off the glycerine, there's an extra step of washing your biodiesel. On my Chevy truck, the 6.5 engine, you must wash your biodiesel. On something like the Volkswagen, it could run on straight oil. You don't need to wash your biodiesel, but that's just my opinion. So I'm going to start running the biodiesel through our filters. In the back of the processor, down here, we have a 20 micron filter and a 5 micron filter. All they are is in-house water filters, because I found that is the most efficient way. The replacement filters are only $2, whereas the actual biodiesel filters that also take it only to 5 microns are about $35 to replace. So these have been working great. I'm going to keep using those, and I could replace my filters all the time. So I'm going to turn on my pump and open the valve in the back, which leads to my filters. We should start to see some flow here into my tank. I use this valve that flows back into my processor to add pressure to the filter. We don't want to add too much pressure into the filters. We just want it to take out all the air bubbles in the line. So I'm going to slowly choke this. And that seems to be about the right amount we want there. And that's all there is to it. If you have any questions, you could email me at gregarabia@yahoo.com or ara7336@calu.edu. Thank you.